actually agreed with more of that than I thought I was going to agree with. Mitch did not say that he doesn't think that cannabis can cause psychosis. And he didn't say that psychosis carries a huge downstream risk for violence. And he knows those things are true. So I think the sort of thoughts you're talking about, as you probably know, don't really represent the experience that leads to violence, right? This is not somebody ruminating. This is somebody having a voice shout at him or her for hours or days or weeks. Having a full-blown psychotic break is a terrifying and awful experience for people. Schizophrenia is a terrible disease, and to the extent cannabis can produce these experiences in people, we need to let them know. It's quite clear that a lot of people who are committing terrible crimes are using cannabis at the time of the crimes, especially when there's psychosis involved. There's data from Britain that shows that. There's data from Australia that shows that. There's tons of anecdotal data that shows that. It's very clear from the longitudinal studies, the first of which came out 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago, and covered 50,000 people in Sweden, that if you use a lot of cannabis as a teenager, your risk for developing schizophrenia is somewhere between increased 2 and 4-fold. The best numbers on schizophrenia are that about 1 person in 150 will develop it in his or her lifetime. So if you double that, you're getting an extra 1 person in 150. Quadrupling it would be an extra 1 person in 50, approximately. So, you know, that would be 2% of the population getting schizophrenia that wouldn't otherwise get it if everyone used cannabis, which of course is not going to be the case. To me, that's a big number because schizophrenia is a terrible disease. It may not be a big enough number to change your views about legalization. That's a different question. The book really is not about, my book is not really about politics, and it's not really even about legalization. I do say at the end that I don't think we should legalize this drug because I don't think we should have a commercial community promoting the use of it, and I think the experience of the last 100 years in tobacco has taught us that we cannot trust the promoters of addictive products to be honest with us about their dangers. But that is a different question. Beyond the risk of permanent psychosis, cannabis causes a tremendous amount of temporary psychosis. These are the cases where sometimes people wind up in the ER, sometimes they don't. You have a gummy and you're on the floor for 12 hours thinking that somebody's going to break into your house and kill you. That's psychosis. If you go to the ER, they may tell you you're having a panic attack. They may tell you you're paranoid, but on your diagnosis, it's going to say you have cannabis-induced psychosis. The data from my book, which unfortunately goes to 2014 because at the time I was writing, there was not more recent data available, showed that about more than 10% of all the ER admissions for psychosis in the United States in 2014 were for heavy cannabis users. Who are about 1.5% of the population. I'm talking about people with a diagnosable cannabis use disorder. That was 90,000 people in 2014, so that's a couple hundred people a day, every day, showing up at ERs with psychosis. Not all those people are going to get violent. Not all those people are going to do anything terrible. Some of them will. Again, psychosis is a massive risk for violence. People with schizophrenia are about 20 times more likely to commit homicides than people who are healthy. And most of that risk is mediated by drug use. In other words, if you're not taking drugs, recreational drugs, and you're taking your antipsychotics, you're not at a huge excess risk for violence. But if you are, your risk is really off the charts. If you just do the math, if most of the people who are not taking drugs and who are on antipsychotics are not at excess risk, and the total risk is 20x, the risk of the people who are using drugs has to be much higher than that. So again, I'm not here to tell you that we need to make this drug illegal. We're not going to put 40 million people in jail for cannabis use. And the fact is that in New York and in most states, cannabis possession effectively has been decriminalized anyway. So I think really the question is how far up the chain you want to extend decriminalization. I was talking to the New York Special Narcotics Prosecutor last week, and she said to me, effectively, they don't prosecute cannabis at all. You know, if you happen to be dealing meth and you have cannabis on the side, you know, maybe you'll get caught up in an investigation. But they're not chasing cannabis users or dealers or traffickers at all. So, you know, if that's where we wind up, that's where we wind up. And to me, the issue is really, and I think Mitch said this, it's really about warning people. It's about telling people that this is not a harmless drug. And for a lot of people, it's actually a dangerous drug. We're not afraid to say that about tobacco. We're not afraid to say that about alcohol. You know, not everybody who drinks and drives is going to get into an accident, but we say drinking and driving is dangerous and you shouldn't do it. Not everybody who smokes tobacco gets lung cancer, but we say tobacco causes lung cancer. Given the magnitude of this risk and given the severity of the consequences, both for the person who's suffering, for his family, and for society, because psychosis is incredibly expensive to treat and really impossible to treat effectively. I mean, some people do get better, but you know, we don't really know why. We don't really know why the drugs work on some people and don't work on other people. Given those issues, it seems to me that to rush to legalize this drug in a way that's inevitably going to encourage its use, and to encourage its use by the people who are most vulnerable, in telling them that this might be good for their psychiatric conditions. You know, it's good if you have insomnia. It's good if you have anxiety. I think that's just a bizarre decision that we're making. At best, this is a recreational intoxicant. It should be presented that way to people. It has side effects. For some people, unfortunately, those side effects are really severe. And that's where we should be if we're going to legalize it, or if we're not going to legalize it, because plenty of people are going to use it, whatever its legal status. This is what we need to tell people. So I thank you all for coming, and I will gladly take whatever questions you have.